Let's delve into due process a little bit more. So we have an arraignment. That's when your prisoner's initial appearance happens before a magistrate and they decide what the charges are. And the basic rights of that person are explained to that person. That's called arraignment. Of course, bail is the security deposit that's required for the release of a suspect before the trial. And Harris County in particular is looking at bail reform. You have many urban counties that are looking at bail reform. So arraignment and bail, those are two very important terms that are needed for due process. Let's go on to due process, true bill and no bill. We talked about that in another chapter, but let's review it again. So the right of a grand jury is guaranteed in Texas. Sorry for the shaking, guys. And federal courts to protect the rights of those who are innocent against harassment or unjustified charges. That's the whole point of having the grand jury indictment. If it is determined that the existence of evidence, the grand jury will return a true bill. In other words, formal charges that enable the case to go to the actual trial will happen when the grand jury returns a true bill. Only rarely does a grand jury refuse to indict by issuing a no bill. And that's what the definition of no bill means, is when the grand jury decides not to indict, and that's more rare than a true bill. A lot of cases enter into a plea bargain, which is a secret bargaining session with the prosecutor. And a lot of cases, a lot of criminal cases do end up in plea bargaining. For some reason, I can't speak. Sorry about that. Continuing on in the due process, you do have a trial, and you do have the adversary process. The adversary process is a legal system used, again, in the English system, English-speaking countries, in which two contesting parties, they will present their opposing points of view and evidence, of course, of law. And that's what we see in our trials. The jury charge, the verdict, and the sentence, those are all still within the due process of law. And then probation, which is a judge's sentence of an offender to actually serve outside of outside of jail or prison, a correctional institution, but under specific restrictions that are adhered to by the prisoner or by the person. You also have the supervision of a probation officer. Continuing on in due process, you cannot have a double jeopardy. Although the state cannot appeal a not guilty verdict because doing so would constitute double jeopardy, prosecutors may appeal the reversal of a guilty verdict by a higher court. Let me repeat that. Although the state cannot appeal a not guilty verdict, the state cannot appeal a not guilty verdict because that would constitute double jeopardy, prosecutors can appeal the reversal of a guilty verdict by a higher court, and the defendant may appeal a guilty verdict. So those are all under the due process of law.